This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Gasper's, yet to be beaten in races he's attended this season, is 4 for 4. But last round lacked his usual rival of Daniel Sadro. And Summit Point, though it has its own challenges, pales in comparison to Mount Panorama Circuit. Plenty more dangers lurk along the narrow walls of this notorious track. Could this be what finally stops the Ghost from dominating? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch Round 7 of the Weekend Warriors, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Stefan Schlacher. Behind the scenes is our director, the Dr. Amjad Yaman, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. This beautiful course in southeastern Australia has a lot of lap length and a lot of history, leaving plenty to talk about. So for a more succinct view, let's take a look at our track guide for the legendary Bathurst. Welcome to Mount Panorama Circuit. Most drivers simply refer to this place as Bathurst, with it being located just to the southwest of the city's major hub. But most ominously, and perhaps appropriately, it's been nicknamed the Mountain. With more than 500 feet of elevation change over the course of a lap, it's easy to understand why. Though originally built for racing, it's become a street circuit over time, with the track itself used for regular traffic and featuring residential housing all along the roads. This makes this 4-mile, 23-turn course incredibly unique in the world of racing. In the past, the track has hosted a variety of types of cars, including open-wheelers. But modern safety standards means that most competitive racing has now been limited to sports cars and touring cars. However, the dangers are very real due to the incredibly high speeds and lack of runoff throughout much of the circuit. The quickest parts are the run up the mountain straight towards Griffin's Bend, and then the flat-out blast back down the Conrad Straight and into the chase. This chicane was added in the late 80s to break up the run down to Murray's Corner. But while most chicanes are derided for ruining the character of a track, the terrifying speed as you approach it and the general difficulty make it fit right in with Bathurst challenges. However, the toughest portions are undoubtedly along the mountain itself, with notorious corners like the Cutting, Brock Skyline, the Dipper, and Forest Elbow. In fact, one of the more unique worries of this course is that all of these parts are so narrow that track blockages due to wrecks are not uncommon in the first few laps. The Australian fans often line the fences and hillsides to witness the daredevil spectacle of drivers trying to claim King of the Mountain. You can't blame them with how rare of a sight a track like Bathurst is today. Always amazes me how scenic it is around here. But Steph, I don't think the drivers really have any time to pay attention to the beautiful trees and whatnot around them.
Oh, most definitely not, Joe. Bathurst in itself is already a challenge, no matter if you drive it in a GT3 car or your street car going up and down it while no racing is taking place. In the Spec Racer 4, these 23 turns will most definitely be so much more of a challenge because of all the off-throttle oversteer these cars have. Now, we talk a lot about that, but we have to do that so much more here today because you are going to spending quite a lot, especially down the hill, on the brakes, and managing that while also having to manage the walls and the gaps to them is going to be rather tricky for these guys here today. Obviously, another thing they will have to pay attention to is their fuel number, because we have stops here today, as always in this series. So a lot of things these guys will have to mention, and it might turn out into quite a, I would nearly say, yard sale if they're not careful enough.
Absolutely. And speaking of stops, let's take a quick stop to mention that the Weekend Warriors is brought to you by Sim Stickers. Whether it's button boxes, steering wheels, or keyboards, they have you covered. You can find out more at simstickers.co.uk. Big thanks to them for sponsoring this season. And this season in the championship is being led currently by David Gaspers. Even though he's missed 2 rounds, they have drop weeks in this series. So that helps him out. Daniel Sadro, who we're watching now getting a fresh car, is just behind him. But we have no Gaspers here thus far. And I do believe that will help Daniel try and close in on him. Steve Elson, Miroslav Juracek, and Jerry McReevy round out your top 5 here in the Spec 1. Now, they have an amateur championship. Steph, how is that shaping up?
Well, Joe, that has gotten mighty spicy there. As with Nico Schuk not being present in the last race, Edward Doherty has closed the gap to exactly 0 points in that standing. So we have a first place tie between Nico Schuk and Edward Doherty. Bob Kern, 3rd place, 11 points behind Tom Gradwell. He himself is 4th with 36 points behind. And then just a few points behind him, we have another tie for 5th place this time around with Billy Bob Wright and Daniel Bureau. 44 points behind your leaders right now in the Spec 2.
And if you've never watched the Weekend Warriors before, just a quick mention on what is happening in this race. It is round 7 out of 12. They run a full 12 race season each season. And they have open setups, but as was mentioned, they've limited the fuel, so they will have pit stops out there today in this 40-minute race. They actually ration the points, so last place will always get 25, you see there, just to make sure that it isn't tilted towards drivers who show up for smaller attended races. They have penalty points for too many incidents. Going to be hard to rack those up around here, especially up atop the mountain. And they have a spare car in case you wreck it along the mountain or anywhere else around this track. There's probably going to be a few drivers that have to use that. One thing you should also use is the subscribe button here for the iRacing Esports Network. Make sure and click that big red button. It's on the YouTube page, or if you're watching this video on YouTube, just go below the video and it will be hooked up to the iRacing Esports Network and won't miss a moment. Provisional pole sitter, as I mentioned, Daniel Sadro ahead of Fred Desai by quite a wide margin, 0.7 of a second. And right now, Steph, it looks like Aaron Vagley is our provisional pole sitter on the Spec 2 side of things.
Yeah, and he himself is sitting in 7th place, so very respectable right now, up and down the mountain. Obviously, at Bathurst, we don't expect too much in the way of the Spec 2 drivers get up to the top 10, as this is obviously the biggest challenge of their season. But still, we do have 2 Spec 2 drivers in the top 10, as Bob Kern is right now sitting in 9th place.
We keep talking about the mountain, and we know attrition will probably play a factor, but one thing we haven't mentioned as much is here along the mountain straight, where we're seeing Bob Kern. The draft between these cars is big in most places, but these are some very long straights. So is that enough to keep someone close, even if they fall back a little bit over the top of the mountain? Or what do you think that's going to do?
Oh yeah, most definitely exactly what you said. You can lose 5, 6, maybe even 7/10 up and down the mountain, but you're still gonna regain that once you enter the mountain again, because you have first the Conrad straight, then obviously between last and first turn. That's also a rather long-ish straight, and then you once again have the straight from turn 1 up to turn 2 before you come up to the mountain again. So it's gonna play strategy-wise a little bit of a role, especially if you are 2nd place and want to save some fuel.
Now, one thing they will have to be fighting with, though, is the weather here today, because as it is set down in Australia, even though it is in November virtual time, that is the summer over there, at least close to the summer. 121 degrees Fahrenheit that they're experiencing currently. and it's going to be a little bit slippery for our competitors out on track as we watch McAreevy look like he's getting a little bit of help, or giving help necessarily, to the number 76, as long as they don't touch coming through the chase. That 76 is Fred Desai, who has lost his second place to Hugh Haycox of all people. Actually, that's a Spec 2 driver on the front row.
Yeah, I call Gripex there. No, in reality, Hugh Haycox, he has shown that he can be quite fast as Gary McAreevy jumps up to third place now. He can be quite fast, and still he is about 6/10 away from Daniel Sadler, as David Gaspers now has finally joined the session. Maybe Hugh Haycox can transform that also in a good race pace. We'll have to see that. One thing I want to say about the weather is I don't think 22 degrees Celsius isn't too uncommon as a weather for the winter times in Bathurst, but most definitely those 49 degrees Celsius, that is a little bit hot for this time of the year.
Certainly going to be. And that could really change the shape of this race with Gaspers. And even though he doesn't have much time to get qualifying in, for those who haven't watched David Gaspers before, well, he's literally won from dead last on the grid in this series. So I wouldn't put it past him to pull that one again. Not good news for Daniel Sadro, for sure. And as we've got just about 3.5 minutes left, these drivers have only got time for maybe 1-2 more laps because it takes a long time to get around here. Let's talk about the track blockages as well coming through the mountain portion. We're getting a good sense of it right here as we watch Murakami, Stefan. For our viewers who haven't been on iRacing or watched a race here at Bathurst, I mean, explain exactly what the fear is.
Well, the fear about this track most definitely is that, the walls, they have a little bit of a slight distance between themselves and the edge of the track, but in reality, you're using all the quote-unquote runoff that you have. The problem really is that the racing line goes all the way to the wall, which isn't something you have very often, even on street courses. Now, on street courses, you sometimes do have that, but in reality, those are mostly slower tracks. In Bathurst, most of the time, when you are getting close to a wall, you're actually quite close to your top speed that they can go. Now, that comes especially into play when you go into the first lap up and down the mountain. If you get that line a little bit wrong on the cold tires, you suddenly hit the wall in quite an awkward angle, leading you to go back onto the track, and then obviously the next one comes in, and because everyone is still very tightly packed on the first lap, that leads to quite a huge pileup in the first lap. Coming over to that, a lot of people mean a lot of wrecks, a lot of cars that need to clean up before you can go again.
Yeah, that'll be really bad news. We're hoping that we won't see that. We've only gotten it a couple times here on the GSRC, and this series is very good about clean racing typically, as we watch and see if Gaspers can get a time in. I think he's on an outlap right now, so as long as he gets a clean lap this next time through, he should be able to get one down. In fact, we'll ride on board here. Should honestly give us a good sense of just how long it takes to get up the run. Well, and right on the very first lap, held corner, unfortunately means that, yeah, he's not going to get a timed lap in, but he'll at least get a little bit of practice.
It wouldn't be the first time where we see David Gaspers not have a qualifying time and then run through the entire field to win it.
Steve Elson coming across, and he's right now in 5th place at last lap. Not an improvement. The 56 is going to have to stay on the 3rd row unless he can come back around on this final lap and go a little bit faster. Ryan Walker, who currently is in 20th spot. This last lap was faster, and that's going to put him up to 9th. That is a huge jump for the number 4.
Huge jump in very deed. Ryan Walker, we have seen him be fast, but he can be quite mistake heavy too in his races, and hopefully he can clear it up because those walls are mighty close.
Murakami coming through the chase and up to Murray's corner. Let's see what this peppermint colored car can do. The 01 has had a couple good races and he's going to get the checkered flag. This is the end of qualifying now. A 2:36.4 was his last lap, and that was his quickest. And this one, unfortunately, will not count. He must have had an off somewhere. See Gregorio in 6, who could potentially move himself a little bit higher, and he does, at least in terms of time, at 2:35.2. Also in place, that bumps him up to the second row and third. Number of drivers trying to use the very few laps that they get here in qualifying, with them being so long, to try and better themselves, including our pole sitter Daniel Sadro, to see if he can extend that gap over to Sai, who's closed it into 0.3 of a second. And no, he can't. He does not go quicker. Doherty and Kern working together as they come to the line. 2:36.9 for Kern. Doherty didn't count, so he must have also had an off track. Stevie Ray finishes up without being able to go any quicker. Michael Shaw, his fastest lap will jump him from 10th to 9th, so the inside of row 5 will be a small improvement. Samuel Dick down in 14th as the 119 tries to go a little bit quicker, and he does not. I'm also watching the 6th place driver, Steve Elson. So could he potentially find himself fighting with Sadro? Sometimes he has the speed, sometimes not. He does go faster, but he does not improve his position. See just a few more coming through. Ryan Walker, one of them. Larry McLeod as well, finishing up Walker's last lap. Whoa! Where did Walker come from?
Well, one thing is sure, Joe, he's completing an extraordinary first rows.
Yeah, absolutely. His quickest lap before that one was a 35.7. He improved by 0.7 of a second. And that is indeed everybody, as Chris Murakami is our only one out there, and we know he's already taken the checkered flag. So let's go through those first few rows to give you an idea of how things look today, as it could be pretty wild. Daniel Sadro on the inside of Ryan Walker on your front row, with third place having Fred Desai, flanked by David Gregorio. Hugh Haycox, the first in our Spec 2 field, on the pole for that field, will be starting in 5th overall. Jerry McAreevy P6. Steve Elson dropped to 7th with Ryan Walker's surprise lap at the end. Stevie Ray starts 8th, and Aaron Vagley 2nd in our Spec 2 will be starting 9th. Michael Shaw rounds out your top 10.
Ian Haycox, the father of your Spec 2 grid leader, is gonna start in 11th place. Bob Kern will be lining up alongside him in 12th place. 7th row is going to be Pascal Montmorency in 13th and Samuel Dick in 14th. Chris Murakami 15th, Larry McLeod in 16th, Brett Holt in 17th, Nico Shu will be lining up in 18th, and in the 10th row we will see Antonio Rees and Gabe Neal.
Zach LeVay starts 21st, then Sean Fleming will be next to him in 22nd. Alexander Asner starts 23rd, Kellen Rhodes in P24. After that, you've got Jeff Jacobson in the 25th spot, Brian Short in 26th, and Paul Barbuza, easy for me to say, in 27th. Tom Gradwell starts 28th, Edward Doty 29th, and Mihail Vasilescu starts 30th.
31st went to Christopher Patterson on the grid. Witness Strickland. 32nd, Jeff Cantor will be lining up in 33rd. Zachary Rivard, 34th, and Paul Jackson, the last car to qualify, will be lining up in 35th. David Gaspers, your championship leader to this point, will be in 36th. Emil Orsas, 37th, and Mats Sjöblom will bring up the rear of the grid in 38th.
So a pretty full field, and even though it's a long lap, this could mean that lap traffic could be an issue in this 40-minute race, and that will be tough. Which, speaking of lap traffic, we tend to see a couple drivers take the early stop, typically strategy-wise, Steph, but if you get caught up behind slower cars, I feel like that's bad news. Do you think we'll still see some of our drivers do the usual early stop?
Honestly, it depends on how the traffic will play out for you. I'm pretty sure that some people will still go for the early pit stop because it always worked out for them. Or maybe someone goes for the early stop because the long stop never worked out for them. So most definitely, the strategies will be interesting. For the first few guys, it will also be interesting when will they catch that lap traffic. Because if they catch them at the point where they are comfortable to pit in, then they most definitely will try to do an undercut.
Porsche pace car already leading them through the chase. Thankfully, don't have to go for a full pace lap in this rolling start series. Daniel Sadro going to be given control after the pace car ducks into the pit lane. Does he go early or does he wait? There goes the pace car. Sadro bringing them up to Murray's corner, waiting patiently. Walker watching to see what kind of jump he gets. Green flag is out. Not much of a wait for Sadro in the end anyways. And in fact, that gives a great jump to Walker, who's already coming up his outside. In fact, it is very close together with a top six. Desai looking in there, as well as Gregorio around through Hell Corner, side by side for a number of them, but it's going to work out in favor of Daniel Sadro.
Yeah, it did work out for him in the back. There's also no incident to report whatsoever, so everyone is still racing cleanly in this race.
You can see the two rows that we've got forming up, a few of them trying to duck into line. Gregorio falls in behind Walker in third. Desai in fourth. Hugh Haycock's following him. In fact, most everybody, by the time they hit Griffin's Bend, looks to be single file, so not many willing to start things off with some side-by-side racing as they come into the mountain portion.
First danger spot, well taken by everyone. That was turn 2. Griffin's Bend obviously also quite a tricky one, but still everyone very easy on their first lap, as David Gasper's already up from 36th up to 28th.
Wow. He's obviously scything through the cars pretty quickly, having some fun back there. But you can see the gap at the front. Sadro pulling away by about 0.6 of a second. That's not going to be enough for him, with Ryan Walker back there as they now come down through the S's into the Dipper. This is another trouble zone. Are we going to see any wrecks through here?
Well, David Gaspers nearly had the wreck with Edward Doherty getting loose ahead of him. He has to go onto the gravel and is able to avoid any trouble, but that most definitely was the first scary moment as there's someone spinning right ahead of him. That was Kellen Rhodes. Opts to go right into the toes. Also, Zachary Rivard lost it into the Dipper and made heavy contact to the wall.
First two victims of the mountain as we come back to our leaders, and it's a battle for second. Walker being overtaken by Gregorio, and they lost a lot of time on the way downhill. And in fact, Walker's going to lose another spot here because there goes Fred Desai. Not just one, but two positions potentially as he's late on the brakes. Gregorio very early on the brakes, almost being overtaken by Walker, getting squeezed off towards the outside of the chase, and this is checking up. Hugh Haycock's behind them. A lot of action here from second down to fifth as they get all clogged up to finish the first lap. They're still trying to sort it out between Walker and Gregorio, and finally he's gotten single file.
A lot of action, but also a lot of respectful racing there. That's what you like to see from the Weekend Warriors.
So as they come through, Desai's got some work to do to catch up to Sadro. This is exactly the kind of gap that he would probably want here early on. Climbing up the mountain straight, Walker looking to try and get himself back the positions he just lost. He chases Gregorio up the hill.
Just a quick update, we don't need to show him, but David Gaspers completed the first lap with plus 11 positions. He now races in 25th position.
Those are the easy positions, though. It'll be interesting to see how things go Once he gets farther up, as Pascal Montmorency is off to the inside of Griffin's Bend for some reason. Well, he had a little bit of contact, actually. Antonio Reese and he came together.
Yeah, just seems like Reese a little bit too early on the turn-in, turns into Montmorency, and yeah, just awkward collision there between the two, sending Pascal into the wall.
And he had to wait a long time for the entire field to go by before he could drive himself back to the pits. Our leader in the number 51 coming down through the dipper a second time. Fred Desai chasing him. Oh, we got some issues for Gregorio, I think that was.
Yeah, it was Gregorio, and I think he actually did hit the wall there down into the dipper. Oh, yes, massive damage to David there. Oh, who is that behind him?
Oh, and Stevie Ray causing a big problem, spinning across the track in front of a bunch of the field, but thankfully I think only a couple made contact with him. As all this was happening, Nico Schuk also had an issue through the dipper. So first we're going to look at David's incident. There's a little curb there, but he's looking okay. Oh, that's where it went wrong.
Yeah, it seems like down the S is just a little bit too eager on the brakes, and that snap oversteer on the brakes catches him out, goes into the left wall, goes into the right wall, and then we're on board with Stevie Ray. I think that actually is an incident with Gregorio.
Well, he was close to him, and I think he was just put off by that. Yeah, he was way off the normal line, so that certainly didn't help his situation. We've also lost Orza, unfortunately, as a number of drivers certainly not having a great second lap through. I see Steve Elson pitting with a lot of damage. Wonder if he was involved in Stevie Ray there.
Yeah, I think he was. He got caught out by him spinning across the track, and then also Ian Haycox running into the back of him. So just altogether awkward situation that nobody really was able to avoid. But that means that David Gaspers is already up into the top 15 because he's in 15th place.
I guess there's something to be said about just avoiding the issues in front of you to gaining spots around here. Gasper surely knows that. But the battle for third we glanced at before we turned the cameras to Gaspers is awful close between Haycox in the final podium spot, Walker behind him, Jerry McAreevy. Gregorio, despite clipping the wall, hasn't seemed to have lost enough pace to have fallen away from them. And then they're trailing along Aaron Vaguely at the very end.
A little bit surprised that Gregorio doesn't have more wheel damage, because there was a really hard hit on his left side. But yeah, seems to be rather unaffected by all of that. Hugh Haycox, though, what a drive by him so far. Spec 2 class, and he's right now in third place. Behind him, Ryan Walker going a little bit in the shortcut section there, but that surely has to be in. Oh, who is that? Fred Desai, second place driver.
Oh no, Freddie's got it turned around, and someone joins him.
Red Holton.
Home. Excuse me, Holton rather. Just goes to show exactly what you were talking about earlier, Steph, the lift throttle oversteer.
Yeah, exactly. I think Holton also got a little bit scared by the yellow flag because of Fred Desai. As we go on to replay there, Ryan Walker right now overtaking Hugh Haycox for that second place. Nothing really we need to show, because that was just aided by traffic, and there's Holton spinning out. That's also Gaspers, by the way, driving by at 23, which means David Gaspers now into 11th place.
So I thought Walker would get a big slowdown penalty for him cutting across the S's, but he seems to be okay, especially considering, like you said, he's moved up to P2 ahead of Haycox. Still a pretty big train behind him. 5 cars in total. Well, make that 4, because there goes Aaron Vaguely, losing traction out of Murray's.
Yeah, just too much over the inside curb there at Murray's, and that is going to bind you, as Aaron Vaguely just found out there. Michael Shaw now right on the tracks behind him. And yeah, David Gaspers, by the ratio, he's catching up to everyone. I would be surprised if he actually fights against Daniel Sadra at the very end of this race for that first place.
For reference, Gaspers in 11th is 13 seconds behind our leader right now. We'll come back to that in a little bit as he grabs another one. That's going to be Ian Haycox, who he demotes into 11th.
Oh,
Ooh,
Samuel Dick.
What happened to him? Did he hit the wall?
Oh no, he didn't clip the wall. He just found out what it means to surf on a curb.
I've been called a curb surfer a number of times in my days skateboarding, but certainly nothing like this, unfortunately. And there he goes into the opposite wall with hard contact. He eventually took a toe.
Yeah.
Brian Short also, just before that unrelated incident, losing it.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
and why is Hugh Haycox losing positions? He's in the S's right now, and thankfully it looks like those around him
Well,
get through.
It happened through the S's, that's as much as I can tell you. Just a little bit too hot into the S's, loses the rear, has to really go onto the brakes. We're gonna see that in a moment. And I think it would actually be better to see that from Gary McReevy for a second time then, because he sadly also got a touch from Gary McReevy that did send him finally into the tire barrier. And that is quite a lot of damage to Hugh's car.
Yeah, and you could see from that onboard that over Brock's skyline, he was already swatting flies as that wheel was shaking everywhere trying to catch it. And that's some bad, horrible damage for him. Come back live, McReevy now promoted up onto the podium. And this also means that Gaspers is now up to 8th.
And interestingly, Hugh Haycox decides to stay out with this damaged car. So most definitely he thinks that he can drive this car until the pit window opens for him and when he can pit safely and drive to the end of the race.
I just noticed something in the upper right of the screen. David Gaspers set the fastest lap of the race, and he's cut that gap down by a second to our leader. So even though he is working against traffic, he is still going faster than the 51.
Well, and he is going faster by about 6/10 than Daniel Sadro, which probably tells you quite a lot as he's now in 7th place. Michael Shaw ahead of him, 1.4 seconds, only the gap between the two. And he is steadily closing in on Daniel Sadro. He started with about 15 to 16 seconds back on Sadro. Now the gap is 11.8 seconds.
You can see Gregorio is actually still running too, but he's starting to lose the draft of McReevy, so that could mean it'll be easy pickings for those behind him. You talked about the pit window. We're past 10 minutes in, so this should be an open window here this time by, I would imagine.
I would imagine so too, and one thing I start to see is that Aaron Figley is starting to get a little bit intimidated by the mountain. He really did hold up Michael Shaw this time around, and David Gaspers has already closed in on Michael Shaw and Aaron Figley and probably will get past them once we cross the start-finish line for another time.
Or the green and black car of Michael Shaw. He's probably not looking forward anymore because we can't see it in his mirrors, but he can. It's David Gaspers gaining so quickly that he's right underneath his gearbox. There he is right there. And with the draft helping him, this could be a slam dunk on the way down the Conrad.
He closed in on Daniel Sadro, by the way, 6/10 just up and down the mountain. That tells you how much speed David Gaspers can carry through there. Now he's past Michael Shaw, and Aaron Figley not too far ahead of him either. Let's see how much he's closing in through the chase. 100 meters, braking quite nicely.
As easy as that was for Gaspers, it was also easy for McReevy to take second away from Walker. Gaspers not out of the woods yet. Gets a good run. Vaguely still in front of him. Shaw says he's going to get out of this mess and take an early stop, so he's not worried about traffic. That bumps David Gaspers, once our timing and scoring updates here, up to 5th position now.
Plus 31 positions from the starting grid in just 5 laps. Take that.
Yeah, just incredible stuff. So Shaw, I believe, is our first scheduled stop from what we can tell. We also missed an incident with the 299. That's Todd Gradwell, who apparently spun through the dipper.
Yeah, and you can't see the damage right now on his car, but he was already heavily damaged going into the dipper, and that's just one of the laziest spins I've ever seen on a Spec Racer Ford. So there must have happened something before that already, otherwise that car wouldn't have behaved like that through the dipper.
And McAreevy looking pretty strong here through the mountain section, even though he gave a tow up the hill to Ryan Walker. He's pulled himself about a half-second gap. Let's see if he can pull away through the twisty bits. Gregorio still trailing them. You'll see flashes of that green and yellow car there behind. Now up to McPhillamy Park, and Walker actually gaining a little bit as they pick up speed through here. Oh, and normally I would not recommend a pass over Brock's skyline. He decides not to, but he took a little bit of a peek. Down through the dipper, clearly between the two of them. McAreevy stronger through that portion as he pulled away once again. And they come onto the Conrad straight, but Christopher Patterson might not because he is slow. I think he managed to get away lucky on this one. This is in McPhillamy Park.
Yeah, in McPhillamy Park, and that was also Gabe Nail ahead of him having a bit of a moment. Actually, I have to say, this one looked way worse at the start of his spin than what actually came from it. So Patterson, most definitely a very lucky crash for him.
Let's not overlook Ed Doherty. He started 29th, and that was with a qualifying lap, so this is a legitimate hard charger here. He's up to 11th now. So the 294 has got himself a few spots, probably by attrition, but obviously he's comfortable in the car since everybody else has crashed, and he has not. He might get another one here because there's Ian Haycox going to come into the pits. That will indeed be one more spot. We've also got... looks like Bob Kern heading down in.
If I remember the words of Mr. Soup, Bill San, right, he would actually count David Gaspers as a legitimate hard charger because he tried to set a qualifying time, just had an off-track in it.
Well, whatever the case, David Gaspers certainly is making a lot of inroads. You can see the number 23. For those wondering, the gap between himself and the leader is now down to 9.8 seconds. Now, this is the dangerous part where we consider doing math on the channel, because we got to figure out how many laps are left and if this consistent pace is enough for him to catch Sadro in time.
Let's see, we have 23 and a half minutes left. That means with a lap times of about 2.5 minutes per lap. We are at the end of this lap, roughly halfway around, so I would say we will have about 14, maybe, just maybe 15 laps worth of race. So I think that Gaspers will be there.
Sorry, Fleming and Hugh Haycox. Oh, and they're right in front of traffic, and Hugh gets two cars. That was Holton and Cantor. Oh, no. Both of them were turned around in separate incidents. This is Fleming's first. He gets completely turned 180. Does he stay off the wall? Wow, he stayed off the wall.
That is a great save by Fleming. I have to give, though, a little bit of harsh words for you, Haycox, because he sadly backed right into Jeff Cantor and Brett Holton.
Yeah, and if they got suspension damage out of those clips, we'll certainly not be happy about that. Fleming got going in 20th, and Hugh Haycox is in 22nd, it looks like. So he is also at least driving.
And David Gaspers has caught the back of the second place battle pack as now Ryan Walker and David Gregorio say goodbye, David. I am going into the pit lane.
Yeah, I think Gregorio trying to get his spare car, considering he's all banged up at this point. Certainly banged over the curbs on the pit entry, and that slowed him up slightly. He lost a lot of time to Walker up ahead. You could see how distant the car is. But Gasper's now 8.4 seconds behind Sadro.
And a new fastest lap to his name at 2:33.1 was that 5:44. Fastest lap by about a full second.
There's only one car between Gasper's and Sadro at this point, and that is Jerry McAreevy. That granted, some of the cars that would have been between them did pit a little bit earlier than we anticipated. But we've lost a few along the way of our 38 starters. Zach Rivard, Emil Orza, Antonio Reese, and Ryan Short are all DNFs.
Just to still have this in mind, David Gasper started in 36th. He's right now third.
Makes me wonder, when is Daniel Sadro going to pit as well?
Quite honestly, Daniel Sadro, if I would be him, I would be staying out as long as I can, so I can be in the clean air for as long as I can. The next car up ahead is Samuel Dick, who is now coming up to Forrest's elbow. So there's still a little bit ways to go for Daniel Sadro to catch him.
Got a bit of a battle in the mid-pack. We've had so much exciting front. Oh, and before we can get to it, Jeff Jacobson has lost it in the cutting. It was all on his own as he was chased by Gregorio. Dave did a good job seeing that coming and go around the outside of him. Let's watch on the replay. If we want a good onboard, Brett Holton nearly gets a piece of this accident as he's trying to get turned around. There's the initial spin. Flips the inside wall. Here's Holton coming up blind into the cutting. This is always your worst fear. And he sees the inside and just squeaks through in time. Oh, God.
You know what? I'm sorry, Jeff, but if I would know it better, that looks like Jeff tried to take out Brett Holton as he accelerated right when Brett Holton was coming along. Obviously, he didn't try to do that, but yeah, quite some funny circumstances right there with Jeff Jacobson interpreting his F3 box a little bit wrong. But yeah, no harm, no foul, no protest.
Meanwhile, Paul Barbuza being chased by Alex Asner and Ryan Walker, former second place driver, as well as Steve Elson, who's got his spare car. Elson's going to try and attack on Walker, but he goes way deep. Can he make the corner? No, he can't. He's off into the grass. That is going to slow him down and give the spot back to Ryan.
Ahead of them, that's Paul Barbuza pitting in now for his stop. Started 27th up to 12th place. That was quite the run for him.
Walker is our highest pitter thus far, followed by Elson. Bit of a long stop for Walker, though. I'm seeing 13 seconds in the stall for him versus Elson's 7. Oh, actually, you know what? I take that back. Remember, Elson came in early, so Elson still needs to make another stop, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure so too. Same with Michael Shaw and Brett Holton. 13.4 is about the legitimate time that you would need to stop in your pit lane to have sufficient amount of fuel for your second stop. Whoa, who is that?
That's Zachary LeVay. Turned around once again. Griffin's Bend has been calamity corner for a lot of drivers.
Yeah, it is exactly the weak point of this car because you're braking still while turning, and most of the times that doesn't cope well, especially if you go that far out like Zachary LeVay did, because all the way out there is a little bit of a nasty bump that you can hit in the wrong spot like you did, and that's sending you quite heavily around the clock. And oh, I thought that's Daniel Sadro being slow, but that's actually just Alexander Asner.
Yeah. Similar painted cars. They might be teammates. And I'm trying to see if he had a missed shift or what in the world happened. He was just very, very slow. I see. He let the position go to Elson.
Pretty sure that's just a similar paint scheme between Asner and Sadro.
Yeah, you might be right there. From above, it looks pretty close. Well, as that side-by-side action between himself and Michael Shaw, who's in a hurry to get by the driver who is not pitted yet. McAreevy, speaking of pit stops, is in from second place. Gasper goes through. So where is this going to put him in relation to Walker? Elson just got by Walker. There you see Gaspers coming up the mountain straight.
Pretty sure Walker should still be behind Gary McReevy, who is now stopped in his pit stall. 6 seconds, 8 seconds, still standing. Edward Doherty is pitting in. 13 seconds. Now he doesn't go. Now he goes. 15.6
It's a long
seconds
stop.
for him.
Yeah, McAreevy very slow in pit lane, but you're right. Walker is still well back there. In fact, way far back there. Look at the gap between them. I'm pretty sure it was a lot closer than that last we looked. Must have been caught up behind a lot of drivers. Asner also pitting and freeing up space ahead of them. We're still waiting on a few drivers up at the front to stop. Sadro, Gaspers, Vaguely, Murakami, and Nail. I think Sean Fleming still needs to take his. We still got maybe about 5 more minutes before drivers really need to come and take their fuel. I haven't really talked about it much, and usually on these draft tracks, it's a big talking point, is the fuel itself and the pit stops. I don't recall seeing anybody who looks like they're playing any tricky strategy games, Steph.
No, you're right. We didn't see pretty much anyone trying to do that. I think that's just how much they are worried about just getting safely over and once again down the mountain, that they are really not worried about their strategy. One thing that Daniel Sadger is starting to be more and more concerned is that car behind him, which is piloted by David Gaspers. Last lap, once again, a new fastest lap for the German at 2:33.180, which was about a full second faster than Daniel Sadler, who now has pitted in. Same with David Gaspers, your first 2 leaders going into pit lane.
All right, Sadro in. There's Walker down in 4th. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me, not in 4th. He had a problem. This is down into Forest Elbow, one of the more difficult braking zones. Round she goes. Managed not to hit anything. Fortunately, did lose him time. Pretty much all of our front runners now in and out. Gaspers had followed Sadro in. He was down to about 6 seconds. Gaspers back out. Nail keeps going, though. So Nail still has not pitted. That's why he is in 3rd place, even though he started in 20th.
Look at that gap, though, that David Gaspers did pull on Jerry McReevy in just 2 laps. That is a full 2, and actually that's a full 5 seconds between David Gaspers and Jerry McReevy.
Gaspers, though, did have a quicker stop. It was 11 seconds versus McAreevy's 5, so that explains some of the time right there. Even still, Gaspers making great use of the time that he's got in free air, which, again, this is not good for Sadro because it is now a straight fight from here. About the only thing that can interrupt them is lap traffic, and there doesn't appear to be a whole lot in their near future. Gregorio not done with his excitement. Did he get the wall here? Or did he just slip up?
Wait, did Gregorio? Yeah, Gregorio somewhere on lap 10 has gotten into a wall on the left side.
Second time this race. Just had to catch it in this case. We don't really have the replay of his other incident, unfortunately. Gregorio still running 7th, but considering he started this race in 4th.
Oh, Gregorio!
And Gregorio is now around, and that will probably be race over. He takes a tow immediately. Cannot overstress the difficulty of this track.
Yeah, all went sideways there for him, right in the S's. Just loses the back, probably already because of the damage that he had, that he suffered in the dipper just a lap earlier. And just, yeah, that's his race done with the toe. And didn't exit yet out of the race, but that's surely his race completely done for there.
Watch him nail, and as we expected, that is the last car to duck in. That's going to free up McAreevy to retake third position. But we haven't gotten a full lap with both Sadro and Gaspers running at full tilt yet to be able to compare their laps. The Sadro has about 5.5 seconds between them, and he crossed the line at about exactly 11 minutes, so 2.5-minute laps. We're looking at 4 laps to go, something like that.
Yeah, 5 to 4 laps to go, depending on when they cross the start-finish line. Either way, I think Gaspers might be there at the very end, because don't forget, yes, he is faster over and down the mountain, but then he will also have to draft up and down the straights. So that all will play into him catching Sadro, and I'm pretty sure, at least in the last lap, we will have last lap, last corner shootout between Gaspers and Sadro.
Right now we're watching Michael Shaw and Aaron Vagley. This is a battle for fourth, but for Vagley this is important because he is our lead Spec 2, and right now fourth place will be a huge chunk of points in that championship. Edward Doherty is down in 8th, so he wants as many as he can get, even though they are racing 2 separate classes. For those who are fans of Gabe Nell, he cycled back out in 13th. This has been a great climb for him, having started in 20th. So it wasn't just the pit stops making him look good. He really is doing fairly well.
Right now, your Spec 2 leader, though, is still Aaron Fuggerly, sitting in 4th place, ahead of Michael Shaw, who is sitting in 6th place. Obviously, Michael Shaw being a Spec 1 driver. He doesn't really fight with Fuggerly, but he does still fight with him, because both Spec 1 and Spec 2, they score points on their overall position in the race, not just on their class position.
Down through the dipper one more time. We watch Bob Kern chasing Ian Haycox. And did Haycox just get the wall? I think he did.
Oh, he nearly got more than just the wall. Nearly also Bob Kern once again. Oh, Steve Nelson, that is.
Oh, what a catch by Elson, though. Holy cow. Let's watch the onboard here for Steven. Just clipped him. He's already got a damaged car. You can see here on the nose. See the slowed car of Haycox. Knows he has to go around the outside. Wow. Great hands.
Stephen Elson himself got the damage on the the cutting. There we go, the cutting, which is obviously turn 3. So Stephen Elson has a lot of damage alongside with Ian Haycox, both of them opting to not drive into the pit lane. So they stay in their respective positions of 11th and 13th. Ian Haycox nearly losing the car once again in the last turn. Bob Kern just had to give up the position against Christopher Patterson for 9th place.
In fact, we saw those two. It was Kern in the orange and blue car and Patterson who was fighting with him. But we've jumped back to Shaw and Vagley, still very, very close as they come out of Griffin's into the cutting. Vagley, the car ahead in the deep navy blue-green, I guess you would call it, deep teal, just in front of the black and green of Michael Shaw. Up towards the top of the mountain, around the various parks, up towards McPhillamy. Vaguely not looking like he's going to give this one up quite yet, but he's got to defend for another 7 minutes. Don't have to leave this. Gaspers is down to 4.5 seconds behind Sadro. He continues to gain. Wow, Aaron with a big slide down through the dipper. Still not brave enough. Michael Shaw doesn't try to attack through the most narrow portion of the track. Instead, he's setting himself up. He gets within the slipstream and down the Conrad straight. This might be a little bit easier for an overtake.
By the way, one thing we didn't show but has quite a lot of championship implications is that Nico Schuk did wreck on lap 10 quite heavily out of the chase. His race is done, and that means that opens up the championship even more than it already was.
Easy pass from Michael Shaw. That gifts him 4th place, vaguely now down to 5th. They come across the line. Since I last looked at it, it's already been half a second knocked off by Gaspers. As soon as he gets into the draft, I feel like it might be game over for Daniel. There's the lap comparisons. Just steadily chipping away, breaking it down. Meanwhile, farther down in the field for 20th, Jacobson and Fleming fighting for the mid-pack positions. I think Fleming's got a very good run here. He's going to take it side by side down into the kink, leading up towards the chase. In fact, nope, he's going to be fully beyond him by the time he hits that kink. So much easier pass than I would have anticipated for the number 74. That gives him 20th. Can't disregard some of these mid-pack battles, because just as important, especially with people like Haycox and Elson up in 12th, who are side by side coming up to Griffin's Bend. Both of them very damaged, in fact, as they're behind Nail. And around the outside, this can be a tough one to try and complete, as there's not much grip, but Elson somehow holds on, and still it continues as they climb the hill up towards the cutting. Finally, it looks like Ian is going to give up the ghost and back out of it. Nail getting by those two means that he is now up to 11th.
Meanwhile, all of that was going on. Daniel Sadger got held up massively by Witness Strickland up and down the mountain, which now has closed down the gap between himself and David Gaspers to only 1.7 seconds.
Ooh. This is going to be even tighter now. As they come out of the chase, 1.5, 2 more tenths knocked off, and he's got 2 laps to go, this time by the line. I think that there's going to be a whiff of the slipstream now getting to Gaspers with how close he is.
Yeah, the slipstream goes back to about 1.7 seconds in this car, if I remember correctly, but the draft only really gets effective by about 1.2 to 1 second behind the car ahead of you. So Gasper's most definitely now in the benefit of the draft.
Don't need to show it, but vaguely got by Shaw yet again, up to 4th position. Something's happened to Christopher Patterson, though. We were watching him not long ago. Oh, he seems to have hit the wall somewhere. Oh, it was in the dipper. Oh.
You hate to see it when it goes wrong, and that's exactly what happened for Christopher Patterson. Just a little bit too much speed there into the dipper, gets the bump wrong, and that's one heavy hit into the wall. Actually has to pit in for a new car.
Yeah, that is a shame to see. And the one consolation is that there's no life and limb here on the line for the virtual world, so drivers can take those risks and we can enjoy the thrills. But right now, I think the real thrills are going to be here for the lead, because with a lap and a half to go, Gaspers is now right with Sadro. Gaspers, having started this race in 36 out of 38 cars, only 2 started behind him, and he's about to fight for the lead. So if you're Sadro, Steph, do you let him by in hopes that you could slipstream him right back coming down the Conrad next time by?
quite honestly, I'm not sure if Sadler has anything speaking for himself right now, because David Gaspers is about 5 to 6 tenths faster over the mountain than Daniel Sadler. Maybe he can stick somewhat with him and have Conrad help him, but I think that might actually be quite a dive if he would try something like that.
Gaspers up into the lead with an easy pass, but he's pushing hard. He went a little bit off track coming through the chase, and this is going to give Sadro an opportunity to try and attack back. He looks to the inside into Murray's and then thinks twice about it. White flag now waved for our drivers as they come across the line. Sadro is within the slipstream. Does he try it here, or does he wait for the downhill? Through Hell corner. Oh, he's way wide. He is very wide comparatively to Gaspers. I think David might have a chance at running away from him here, depending on what the slipstream does for the 51. It's at 0.6 of a second. 0.5. It's starting to come down. Finally, they break for Griffin's Bend. Sadro gets it down to 0.5 second, but he is going to have to hustle this car over the top of the mountain to be close enough to attack down into the chase. Oh, taking it all the way to the edge. Gaspers nearly brushing the wall out of the cutting. He is trying everything to try and shake Daniel Sadro. Towards McPhillamy Park now. This is going to be even tougher trying to push the car to the limit here. Does he dare try and flirt with disaster? Sadro's re-caught up with him using the draft on that long run up to Brock's Skyline. Both of them looking smooth. The Dippers caught a lot of people out, but it doesn't catch either of them out this time. But Gasper's looking quicker through that portion. Now they come to Forest Elbow. This is going to be critical. The corner exit will mean everything for both drivers, and both of them manage to nail it. It's 0.5 second between them, but the speeds start to pick up. Over 100 miles an hour now. Gaspers a few car lengths ahead. It's 0.5 of a second. Now down to 0.4 of a second. Sadro is gaining. He wants to be the first one this season to deny Gaspers a victory on a race he attended, and he's got a huge head of steam. 130 miles an hour. He manages to get by, and he is fully ahead by the time they get up. No, he's not. He's still got a nose in there. Gasper's going to try and outbrake him. Could we see the over-under potentially? Could Gaspers get it slowed up in time? Yes, he can. Sadro now has one last chance to attack. It is going to be down into Murray's. Gaspers holding the middle of the track just slightly, now comes back to the racing line. Sadro doesn't even attempt it. They take it through Murray's corner, and it looks like Gaspers is going to be 5 for 5.
And this time he does it from 36th on the rows. We take you back to the battle for P4. That's between Aaron Fögeli, who is your leader of the Spec 2 class, and Michael Shaw. Michael Shaw will have the inside for the last turn. Let's see if Aaron Fögeli can do what Daniel Sadler didn't do. He brakes later. It was that too late. Yes, it was. Goes off the track, and that means Michael Shaw will take home 4th place.
Wow, great stuff. 9th place, also close. It's Kern and Nail. Nail has now got himself up to 10th. He wants more as they come through the chase. Over the crest and down towards the final turn. Nail starts to fall back. Kern might have him covered off here unless we see an absolute dive bomb from the 264. And we're not going to. Takes a little bit of a peek, so Kern is going to hold on to P9.
The next battle show will be the battle for P13. That is between Mihail Vasilescu, Paul Barbusa, and Zachary Levay. That was
Mihail
cool.
Out of fuel, I think. Mihail is slow. He's falling down and losing tons of positions with so many closed in behind him.
Whoa. Oh,
and Barbusa is going to take it as Holton smashes it into the wall in the final turn. He doesn't need that car anymore. Something happened to Steve Elson while we weren't looking, though. Let's take a look at the replay so we can clear that up. 2 laps to go, and he's up towards McPhillamy. Little curb to the inside, a little curb to the outside, but nothing yet.
Yeah, it is going to happen through the dipper, and once again, you hate to see it, but that's just what a damaged car does. A little bit too fast into the dipper, gets too much grip at the bottom of it, and just nowhere to avoid that point.
Well, that's going to close us out, at least for our coverage of the race itself. We've got our post-race show yet to come, where we'll give you the unofficial results, as well as driver interviews. If you stick around, you'll see all the upcoming races here on the GSRC. Welcome back to Mount Panorama Circuit. And the Weekend Warriors Round 7 was won by David Gaspers, which sounds normal, but keep in mind that Gaspers started 36th out of 38 drivers today, and still he managed to beat Daniel Sadro, who had put it on pole. Sadro settles for second, even though he fought his hardest to try and get that spot back in the last 2 laps. Third went to Jerry McAreevy, with Michael Shaw an impressive 10th to 4th, and Aaron Vagley, our winner in the Spec 2, finishing within the top 5. Ryan Walker was behind them. He was on the front row with a surprise qualifying, but fell back to 6th in the end. Chris Murakami takes 7th. Edward Doherty, how about this one? 29th to 8th himself, similar to Gaspers, climbing well forward. 9th went to Bob Kern, and Gabe Nail rounds out your top 10.
Fred Desai going the wrong way as he started in 3rd place and has to settle for an 11th place finish. Ian Haycox started in 11th, finishes in 12th place. That doesn't tell you the story though, because Haycox had a lot of trouble in the start of the race, where he was quite a lot further up the road. Still a respectable 12th place for him. Paul Barbusa gains 14 positions from his 27th grid spot to finish in 13th. Zachary LaVey finishes in 14th. Alexander Asnar in 15th. Brett Holton finishes finally in 16th place. Mihail Vasilescu, after being in 4th place going into the last lap, he finishes in 17th because he ran out of fuel on that last lap. Sean Fleming finishes in 18th. Jeff Jacobs 19th, and the last car in the top 20 will be Jeff Cantor.
Last cars on the lead lap are Stevie Ray, Kellen Rhodes, Pascal Montmorency, and Matt Solblum. That's 21st to 24th. Then you get into the drivers that actually did get lapped. Samuel Dick in 25th, Christopher Patterson in 26th, and Tom Gradwell in 27th. Whitney Strickland was 1 lap down in 28th, but Steve Elson, because of his early retirement, wound up 29th and 2 laps down. Paul Jackson also DNF'd in 30th.
31st went to David Gregorio in the end. Nico Schuch 32nd, Larry McCallum 33rd, Hugh Haycox 34th, Brian D. Short in 35th, Antonio Reese 36th, Emil Orsa 37th, and last place goes to Zachary Bart, who crashed out in the very first lap.
That brings us to our interview with our winner today, David Gaspers, who's 5 for 5, but this one from 36th on the grid. David, we are watching your first lap here, and that was impressive, overtaking 11 cars. just on the first lap. Talk us through your process on tackling that first one through.
I just tried to stay out of the way of aggressors. I got quite lucky in the first 2 or 3 laps. I think someone spun in front of me in the dipper, and I always somehow got through it. But yeah, I just tried to stay out of the way there.
You started to run down Daniel Sadro, and then it looked like you made the move almost a little bit early because Daniel stayed with you, and it looks like he tried to use the draft to get you right back. Were you at all worried that he would be able to slingshot by and snipe you at the end?
I think with the distance I had at the start of the straight, I knew that we would end up side by side. But yeah, I feel sorry for Dan. I would have had a chance to attack him if it wasn't for the lap traffic.
Yeah, that definitely played a part in this. And this is probably one of the more difficult circuits on iRacing, and especially in the Spec Racer Ford with a lift throttle oversteer. I mean, how much do you flirt with that with this car around here, with how unsteady it can get when you take fast corners and get off the power?
I don't really know how to describe it, but I know at the start, once you start driving the car, it feels like it's completely impossible to keep it on the track for some laps. But once you get the hang of it, you don't really notice the off-road oversteer anymore. To me, other cars just feel like they have a lot of understeer.
Well, that tells us a lot about why you're so fast. But again, congratulations on the first place from all the way in the back of the field. Will we see you at Suzuka, or not Suzuka, at Coda?
Yeah, we'll be there. Next time, I hope I notice the time earlier and stop watching F1 earlier. That's why I was late today.
All right. Well, no spoilers because we haven't watched it here in the booth, or at least I haven't yet. That was David Gaspers, our winner here today, up in first place. And up next, I believe Steph has caught up with Aaron Vagley, our winner in the Spec 2 field.
Yeah, exactly. And Aaron, quite impressive drive there from you, I would say, holding off Michael Shaw for pretty much all of the race and then only in the final lap succeeding that position to him.
Yeah. Kind of was hoping I could hold him off there and that at least get him back in that last corner there, but I kind of overshot it and got into the grass. So a little disappointed in that, but still happy with the finish that I got.
Yeah, exactly. You said it. You tried your best, but in the end, it didn't work out for you. Still, that 5th place, I think that also is your best season result thus far.
Yep, you're right about that.
On the hardest track of the calendar, say, how does that make sense?
I've been trying to ask myself that, trying to figure out why that's the case, like why I do well at Bathurst of all tracks, because I did well here last season too. I think I actually got the same position if I recall. And I don't really know why. There's so many other tracks that people would consider so much easier to do and definitely not as challenging, especially in this car of all cars. But it just works out that way. Gonna try and figure out what I do here that I can do at other tracks and maybe take that and use it for those other tracks in the future.
Well, next up, it's Circuit of the Americas. How are you looking forward to that one?
Now that I think about it, I don't think I've actually done that track since it released on the service. So it's going to be interesting to say the least. So I guess I'll have to put some extra time in next week and just see how it goes.
Well, Aaron, best of luck to you for the next round, and congrats once again on your top 5 finish and first place in the Spec 2 category.
All right, thank you.
That was Aaron Fogley talking to us. Next up is Joe Peak with Ryan Walker.
Just behind him in 6th overall. But Ryan, I have to imagine that's not what you were hoping for since you put it on the front row. You had 2 spins during the race that I could find. Would you attribute the fall in positions to just those, or do you think it was also race pace that kind of sent you backwards?
Yeah, P6 is it's a good result, I guess, but it's not where I wanted to be. It's at the start of the race. I thought I'm not going to be as quick as some of the people like Daniel or Jerry or David Gaspers, people like that. So I just went with the plan of just try and keep out of trouble and try and finish the race. And yeah, I had a good pit stop, but just pushing too hard, I just ended up making a couple of silly mistakes and having a couple of half spins, but yeah, still finished in P6 in the end. So it's a result like that around Bathurst. It's still a good result in my eyes.
And talk about that qualifying lap. That really caught us out. Were you expecting to be that high up the order in terms of one lap pace?
I have to be honest, I wasn't expecting to be there. I was kind of expecting to be round about where I finished, P6, P7, that sort of thing. That's how the lap felt for me. But when I checked the positions after qualifying and seen that I was in P2, I was like, where did that come from?
Same question we were asking. It was an impressive jump in time, but still it allowed you to finish within the top 10 in the end. And will we be able to see you over in the US for COTA next week, or are you not showing up for a full season?
Yeah, I'll definitely be at COTA. I'll probably try and do as many races as possible and try and do the rest of the season. But yeah, I'll be at COTA next week for sure. It's one of my, it's not everyone's favorite track, but it's definitely my favorite track. And anything like the Skip Barber or sports car racing, but I've never done any racing around there in the SRF, so that'll be a new experience.
Well, I think you just immediately gave yourself more screen time from our director with that comment. He shares your opinion. But again, congratulations on a top 10, and look forward to seeing more of you.
Thanks, Joe.
That was Ryan Walker, P6, out there today, and that's going to close us up. So let's thank a few people, including our sponsor, Sim Stickers. Again, if you want to check them out, you can find them at simstickers.co.uk, and they make stickers literally for your sim rig so that you can identify things. It's hard to notice stuff when you're racing, and that can be incredibly useful. Also, a thank you to iRacing for putting us on IES, and make sure and subscribe to their channel when you get the opportunity so that you don't miss a moment here in the Weekend Warriors. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Steph, Amjad, Dougie, and as well to Rem Ambrosi. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. You can check us out on social media, on our Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook, Global Sim Racing Channel, Instagram, GSRC_Cram. We mentioned it. We're heading to Circuit of the Americas for the next round. That'll be Sunday, November 3rd, finally past October, into the final 2 months. That'll be 2:45 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget, we got daylight savings time coming, and that'll change some times. We also have some upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.